Welcome to Dramatic Paths, where every choice changes a destiny. Here, no one escapes the past, but no one is beyond transformation. True stories, unexpected twists, broken lives, and rebuilt. If you've ever faced a silent battle, if you've ever been at rock bottom, you're in the right place. Because on these dramatic paths, the miracle always comes after pain. The snow fell like ashes from a city no one remembered how it used to be. In Detroit, during the harshest winter of the decade, Elias Vance, 47, former CEO of a fintech that failed due to an ethics crisis, spent his days in the apartment that was once a symbol of power, now a monument to emptiness. His last $12 million were liquidated to pay debts. His wife left him for an investor who wasn't afraid to lie. His friends vanished as if he had contracted a plague. Only Mira Reyes, 34, kept coming. She was not an employee. She was not a friend. She was a cleaning lady. She arrived at 7 a.m. with rubber gloves and a mug of instant coffee and sang old Whitney Houston songs while wiping down the cabinets. She never asked about his past. She never asked for a raise. She never smiled for the camera. And Elias, a man who had learned to see people as numbers, began to observe her. One day, he saw her leaving with a shopping bag, not from the luxury store on the corner, but from a neighborhood grocery store where prices were in dollars and the lines were in silence. That night, he sent a black credit card to her home. No letter, no explanation, just a note. Use it. Don't tell me what you did. Just tell me if there is still anyone who wants nothing from me. He didn't expect an answer, but 3 days later, the statement arrived. 200 hot dogs, 30 pounds of sugar, white paint, color balloons, a clown suit medium size, van rental. Elias stood motionless before his laptop screen, the mug of coffee cooling in his hand. He didn't know who Mira was, but he knew she wasn't shopping for herself. It was the first time in years that someone had left him with more questions than answers. The snow kept falling, and he, for the first time, didn't want to be alone. The Detroit winter was unforgiving. The streets were covered in a crust of ice that crunched beneath the tires of Elias Vance's black SUV. He had returned to St. Marlo's Haven shelter the morning after the clown event, not as a declining billionaire, but as a man trying to understand why something so simple, a hot dog, a child's laugh, a pink Band-Aid, had affected him more than any corporate merger. Mira wasn't there, but Margaret, the shelter's director, met him at the door with a look that mixed sympathy and exhaustion. "Mr. Vance, you came back. I wanted to genuinely help, not as a gesture. I want to know what this place needs, permanently." Margaret led him to the basement, where stacked donation boxes threatened to collapse at any moment. The ceiling had water leaks. The heater made a metallic noise, as if coughing its final days. "We need everything, Elias. But what we lack most isn't food. It's hope. The children arrive here having lived through things adults couldn't bear. They don't ask for toys. They ask if they'll have a place to sleep tomorrow." Elias felt the weight of those words like a punch to the gut. How long has Mira been coming here? 2 years. On Fridays. Sometimes Saturdays, when there's a birthday party. She cooks, plays, tells ridiculous stories about dragons who become librarians. Once, she made a shadow puppet show using only her hands and a broken flashlight. She never told me any of this. Why would she? Margaret smiled. She doesn't do it for you. She does it for them. And for herself. I think here she feels whole. Elias drove back to the city center in silence. As he drove, his phone rang. It was James. "Sir, the transaction reports are complete. Daisy rented a yacht for the weekend. Susanna bought an executive leadership course in New York. Valeria booked a luxury spa in Aspen. And Mira, she bought 12 thermal blankets, 3 packages of powdered milk, and a solar charger. The invoice says, for the little one's room, winter is coming." Elias stopped at a red light and looked out the window. A boy no older than 10 was rummaging through a trash can, searching for something edible. His coat was thin, his fingers purple. "James." "Yes, sir." "Cancel all my meetings this week. I want to organize something, a real event. Not a show. Something that gives these children dignity. And I want Mira to be at the center of it. You want her to present? I want her to be the voice. Because she's the only one who speaks from the heart, not the resume. James was silent for a moment. This is risky, sir. You know how people judge those who come from below. Then let them judge, but let them listen first. That night, Elias returned to the apartment and found Mira in the kitchen, scrubbing a pot with such vigor it seemed like she was fighting a mortal enemy. Mira! She turned around, surprised. Oh, it's you. Haven't you passed out from hunger yet? No, thanks to your legendary hot dogs. She laughed, but stopped when she saw the seriousness on his face. What is it? I want to officially support the shelter, with funds, staff, structure, but only if you are in charge of the project. Mira let the sponge drop into the sink. Have you lost your mind? I'm clearer than I've ever been. Elias, I'm a cleaner. I don't know how to give speeches. I don't know how to wear suits. People like you, they speak a language I don't even understand. Then I'll translate, but the story is yours. Why? Why do you care? He looked at her, and for the first time he didn't see an employee. He saw a woman who held a whole world within her silence. Because yesterday, when that little girl fell, you took off the clown nose before you talked to her. Because you knew she needed a real person, not a character. And that is rare. It's precious. Mira looked away, but not before he saw her eyes well up. You don't know what you're asking. Perhaps not. But I know what I'm losing if you say no. She took a deep breath. All right, but with 3 conditions. Name them. First, if I stumble on stage, you don't laugh. Second, I choose what I wear, and it won't be something that makes me look like a sad mannequin. Third, she paused. Third, you promise me this isn't just another rich person's hobby. Because those kids, they aren't a project. They are people. I promise. Mira nodded. Then let's do this. But fair warning, I'm going to practice in the kitchen, and my audience will be your coffee maker. She's already a fan. Says your voice blends perfectly with the sound of the steam. Mira laughed. A genuine, warm sound that melted part of the cold Elias had been carrying inside him for years. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside that apartment, something had begun to thaw. The snow had stopped, but the cold had not. Elias Vance had been in the apartment since dawn, sitting on the sofa with his laptop open, his eyes red, the coffee cold on the center table. It wasn't work keeping him awake. It was the silence, and what he had seen at the shelter. Mira hadn't returned to the building since the day of the party. He tried calling. No answer. He sent a message. Are you okay? Nothing. Then he went to his own room, opened the drawer where he kept the cleaning receipts, as if he were an archivist of a life he didn't understand, and found the shelter's address. Street Marlowe's Haven, 1120 West Warren Avenue. He didn't know why, but he went there, still in his jacket, without a coat, without gloves, as if the cold were a punishment he deserved. Elias walked through the icy streets, his feet sinking into the melting snow, until he reached a red brick building with broken windows and a faded sign. The gate was locked. He knocked. No one answered. On the corner, a woman with a dog on a leash looked at him suspiciously. Looking for someone? The shelter. St. Marlowe's. It closed 2 months ago. Elias felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. What? But the party. That day with the balloons, the clowns, the children. Oh, that party? The woman smiled sadly. That was the last one. The city cut the funding. The land was sold. They were going to build a luxury condo there. The people were scattered. Some children were adopted. Others weren't so lucky. Elias said nothing. He just stared at the building, as if he could see through the walls. And the woman? He asked, his voice hoarse. The one who did the clowning? Mira? The woman nodded. She was the last to leave. She came every week, even after the power was cut. She brought supplies. She told stories. Sometimes she just sat with a child who didn't want to talk. She said she wouldn't leave anyone alone, right up until the last day. And where is she now? The woman shook her head. I don't know, but she left a box at the door of the church on the corner. said it was for anyone who wanted to know where she went. Elias did not go home. He went to the church. It was a small wooden place with a crooked cross hanging and a roof heavy with snow. At the entrance, a crushed cardboard box tied with a red ribbon. No label, no name, just a note taped to the lid, written in blue pen. If you made it here, it's because you want to know. Then go to the last bench in the last row of the public library on 10th Street. The story you are looking for is in the book I left behind. Don't open it. Read it. Then tell me if you still think I'm just a cleaning lady. Elias picked up the box. It was heavy. It wasn't clothes. It wasn't food. It was books. 23 children's books, all with Myra's name written on the inside cover, in small, almost shy handwriting. Some were stained with milk. Others had children's scribbles. One had a drawing of a clown holding a rag doll, the same one he had seen on the purchase receipt. On the last page of the last book, The Boy Who Didn't Want to Be Forgotten, there was a folded note, as if it had been hidden there for years. He opened it. Asterisk, Elias, if you are reading this, then you saw the balloons. You saw the children laughing. And still you doubted. Don't blame me for it. I didn't want you to see me as a hero. I just wanted you to see me as someone who still believes a person can change the world without needing money. I grew up here. When I was 8, I was placed in a shelter because my mother couldn't afford to feed me. When I was 15, a family adopted me. They gave me a room, a bed, but they didn't give me love. At 17, I ran away, not because they were bad, but because I was invisible. I cleaned their house. I cooked. I did the laundry. And never, ever did they say thank you. So when I came back here, it wasn't be good. It was not to forget who I was. The children don't ask me to be someone. They just ask me to stay. And I stay. Because when you grow up without anyone telling you that you're worth it, the only way to remember that there is still value is to give value to someone else no one else sees. You gave me a card. I used it to buy what I already knew I needed, not to impress you, but to remind myself I can still make someone smile, even if no one else believes I deserve to. Asterisk. Elias stood in the church, his eyes wet, the book open in his hands, the cold cutting his face. He hadn't understood anything. Until that moment, Mira hadn't used a card to buy gifts. She had used it to remember who she was. And he had used the card to test who she was. She hadn't tried to gain his favor. She had tried not to lose herself. He left the church. He walked to the subway. He rode the train for 2 stops, not knowing where he was. He got home at 3 a.m., and he didn't sleep. The next morning, Elias called James. Find Mira Reyes. Sir, she doesn't have a fixed address. Then find what she does have. Everything. Everything. And if she doesn't want to be found? Elias looked at the book, still open on the table, the page folded. Then I will find a way for her to want to. And he picked up the phone. He called the public library on 10th Street. Hello. I'd like to ask about the book, The Boy Who Didn't Want to Be Forgotten. Of course. It was donated by Mira Reyes. And did she leave any message? Yes. She wrote in the lending log. If anyone reads this and wants to find me, tell them I'm not hiding. I'm in the place where children still need someone who doesn't look at them like a problem. And if you don't know where that is, then you still haven't understood why she left. Elias hung up. He closed his eyes. And for the first time since everything began, he didn't think about money. He didn't think about power. He didn't think about control. He thought about a woman who cleaned his floor and who, without saying a word, had made him see what he had never seen. James, he said, his voice low, as if talking to someone who was still alive. Prepare a car. Where to, sir? Elias opened his eyes. To where she went. She hadn't left. She had gone to the place where the truth still existed. And Elias, for the first time in years, was willing to go after it, not to ask, but to learn. The snow had stopped, but the cold remained, the kind of cold that seeps into bones and settles in the soul. Elias Vance was sitting in the back seat of an old taxi, holding the book Mira had left at the library as if it were a treasure map. He had spent the last 36 hours calling shelters, community churches, closed schools, anywhere children still needed someone who wouldn't judge them. Nothing, not a trace. Until that morning, he received an anonymous email. If you want to find her, go to the old Jefferson School building. Don't enter through the front. The door is locked. Go around to the side where the wall fell. She's in the basement. But don't say I sent you. She doesn't like snitches. Elias didn't hesitate. Jefferson School had been closed in 2018 after the district cut funding. Since then, it had become a refuge for the homeless, a clandestine meal distribution center, and, people said, a meeting place for young people who had nowhere else to go. The neighborhood was dangerous. But Elias was no longer interested in safety. He was interested in truth. The taxi stopped 2 blocks away. The driver refused to go any closer. There's no self-service down there, man. And the guys who hang out there, let's just say they don't like visitors who look like money. Elias paid in cash and continued on foot. The side wall had indeed collapsed, part of the concrete washed away by years of neglect and a hailstorm the previous summer. He slipped through, avoiding broken glass and dry branches. The school basement smelled of mold, damp paint, and cheap noodle soup. She was there. Mira, her back to him, wearing a worn coat and fingerless gloves, was organizing boxes of medicine on improvised shelves made of pallets. Beside her, a girl about 12 thin, with deep-set but alert eyes, was reading aloud to a group of children sitting on mattresses on the floor. And the dragon said, "I am not a villain. I just never had anyone teach me how to be good." Mira interrupted, without turning around. "Sarah, change the ending. Say the dragon built a library with the scales that fell off." "Why?" "Because good stories don't end with forgiveness. They end with building. And we are tired of waiting for forgiveness." Elias swallowed hard. He took a step forward, and the floorboards groaned. Mira turned around. Her eyes narrowed, not with anger, with disappointment. I had to look for you." "No, you had to prove yourself. And this is not where you do that." She turned away again, as if he had already said too much. "Mira, please. I read the book. I read everything. Then you know I don't need you here. But I need to be here. Because I understood something. When you used the card, it wasn't to impress me. It was to remember. To remember that you could still do something that mattered." She stopped, turned back slowly. "Why does that matter to you?" "Because I spent years doing everything to prove I was someone. You did one simple thing, unseen by anyone, and you proved you were human. And that made me feel like I had forgotten how to breathe." Silence. The girl, Sarah, looked from Mira to Elias. "Is he the card guy?" Mira nodded. "He's the guy who gave the card. And now, he doesn't know what to do with it." "I want to help," Elias said, his voice low, almost a plea. "Truly, not with a check. With my hands. My time. My humility." Mira stared at him for a long moment. "Why did you never ask for anything?" he suddenly asked, as if this was a question that had kept him awake at night. She sighed, walked to a broken chair, and sat down. "Because the one who asks is still waiting for someone to come back. My mother left me at the door of a shelter with a note that said, 'Forgive me.' I waited 12 years for her to return. And when I realized she would never come, I stopped asking. I started giving. Because giving doesn't depend on anyone, only on you." Elias felt his eyes sting. "I am not her." "No, you are worse. Because she at least believed I was worth something. You doubted." He didn't answer. He couldn't. Mira stood up. "If you want to help, go to the kitchen. We wash dishes with hot water that was cut on Tuesday, but we still have a bucket with heated coal. Fill the cups with filtered water. The children with the flu need to drink every hour." Elias nodded. "Can I stay?" "You can try." And he went. In the kitchen, as he washed cracked cups with lukewarm water, he heard Mira on the other side of the wall teaching the children to write letters to their future selves. "Don't say, 'I hope I am happy.' Say, 'I hope I still remember that I was loved, even when no one said it out loud.'" Elias held a cup so tightly he almost broke it. That night he went home, but he left his coat in the basement, as a promise. Elias Vance didn't sleep that night. Not out of guilt, not out of regret, but out of anger at himself. He had spent his life building walls of logic, control, and predictability. And Mira, with a worn-out clown suit and 200 hot dogs, had walked right through it all as if the ramparts were made of paper. And now, as he walked back to the Jefferson School building the next morning, carrying a box of supplies he bought with his own money, not with a test card, he realized something awful. He was still thinking like an observer, not like someone who belonged. The wall was still down. The basement was still warmed by coal in a rusty bucket. And Mira, her back to him, was teaching 2 children how to sew a doll from scraps of an old coat. The nose has to be red. The boy said seriously. Why? Asked the girl. Because that's how the dragon knows he's a friend. Dragons don't trust clowns without red noses. Mira smiled. Then let's paint it with sugar paint. It lasts longer. It was at that moment Elias walked in. This time, he didn't ask permission. He didn't use titles. He didn't mention the past. I brought antibacterial soap, compresses, and a solar charger that works with natural light. I also bought 30 packages of pasta, the kind that doesn't need expensive sauce. Just hot water and a little salt. Mira turned around. She didn't smile, but she didn't kick him out either. Why? Because yesterday, when you said that whoever asks is still waiting for someone to come back, I realized that I never stopped asking. I just asked with money instead of words. She stared at him. Behind her tired eyes, there was a question she didn't ask aloud. Are you here to redeem yourself or to use yourself? If you're going to stay, she finally said, then go to the kitchen. The hot water came back this morning, but it only lasts 20 minutes a day. We need to wash the sheets before 10. All right. And don't wear your expensive cologne. The children have allergies. I didn't bring any. Liar. You smell like a luxury shopping mall. He laughed, a dry, sincere sound. I showered the bottle before I left. She shook her head, but this time there was the ghost of a smile. Go, before I change my mind. As Elias scrubbed sheets in the cracked sink, he heard Mira on the other side of the wall teaching the children to write letters to their future selves. Dear future me, I hope you still remember that even when the world forgot you, someone made hot soup and called you by name. One of the children asked, what if no one remembers my name anymore? Mira answered without hesitation. Then I'll repeat it every day until you believe it again. Elias stopped scrubbing. The water flowed between his fingers. He closed his eyes. In that instant, he understood the true purpose of the card. It wasn't a test. It was a mirror. And Mira hadn't used the card to impress. She had used it to prove that there was still someone who acted without expecting a return. Later, while folding sheets, Elias heard Ray's voices coming from the corridor. You can't just bring a rich man in here, said an older woman, her voice tense. He's not a rich man right now, Mira replied, calm but firm. He's a man who brings soap. That's rare. But what if he tells? What if it becomes news? You know how the city treats places like this. They send the police, shut everything down, throw the kids out onto the street again. He won't tell. How do you know? Silence. Because he left his coat here yesterday, and he didn't come back for it. Anyone who wants fame takes everything. Anyone who wants to stay leaves something. Elias didn't move. He didn't breathe. He hadn't known he left the coat. But now, he understood what it meant. That night, as he left, he wasn't alone. Mira walked him to the corner. Why are you doing this? She asked, her hands in the pockets of her worn coat. Because you showed me that the world isn't just what I built. It's also what I ignore. And that scares you? It scares me, but it gives me hope. She nodded. Then tomorrow, come early. We need to carry rice sacks from the church warehouse. They weigh 50 pounds. I'll carry them. And don't wear leather shoes. Everything will get wet. I'll wear sneakers. She looked at him for a long moment. Elias. Yes. If one day you doubt again, Don't doubt in silence. Ask, because the worst thing isn't distrust. It's pretending you believe when you've already decided I'm a lie. He swallowed hard. I promise. Promises are easy. Then I will prove it. She didn't answer. She just turned and walked back to the building, disappearing into shadow of the fallen wall. But this time, she didn't close the door. She left it ajar, like an invitation, like a beginning. Microphone translation, the press conference setting. Aqui esta tragiceo de sua historia, preparando o scenario para a defesa pública de Elias. The rain fell that night as if Detroit was crying for everything it had lost, and for everything that could still be saved. Elias Vance did not sleep. Again, he was sitting at the kitchen table of his empty apartment, laptop open, his eyes fixed on an article in the Detroit Free Press that had been published that morning. The title was small, but the venom was great. Missing donations at community shelter. Who was behind the resource diversion? The text did not name names, but it mentioned a collaborator close to the former Jefferson School, suspicious purchases with a credit card of unknown origin, and a history of unregistered activities. Elias knew exactly who they were talking about. They had found the card trail. Someone leaked it. He called James immediately. Who wrote this? A reporter named Lena Torres. New to the paper, but she has connections with the City Hall office. And where did she get the information? From an anonymous source within the Community Support Network. A lie. This is false. Mira never touched donations. She used the card before any official project existed. James paused. Elias, you still haven't talked to her about this, have you? No, because if I do, she'll think I doubt her. Then maybe you should prove that you don't doubt her, instead of just not saying you doubt her. Elias fell silent. Those words pierced him like ice. He remembered Myra's look the previous week, when he asked if anyone had noticed his trips to the shelter. Only those who want something in return. That morning, Elias went to Jefferson School before 6 a.m. Fog hung over the streets like a veil of secrecy. The side gate was open, a sign that she was already there. He entered without making a sound. In the basement, Mira was sitting on the floor, surrounded by children, teaching them to make animal masks out of recycled paper. Her fingers were stained with paint. Her eyes were tired but focused. And the rabbit wore glasses because he read a lot at night, she said in a soft voice. And even when no one believed he could jump that high, he jumped, because knowing you can is stronger than hearing you can't. One of the children asked, "Did you believe in yourself when you were a kid?" Mira paused for an instant. Sometimes no, but I was lucky. I had Margaret, and one day I had a coughing furnace and a boss who gave me a black card and didn't even ask for anything in return. She didn't know Elias was there, leaning against a corridor wall, listening. Why did he do that? Asked another child. Because sometimes good people just need a space to prove they're good. Elias swallowed hard. He never thought he was giving her a space. He thought he was conducting a test. But to her, it was an invitation. At that moment, he made a decision. He wouldn't wait. He wouldn't discreetly investigate. He wouldn't protect his image. He would defend her, publicly, immediately. When Mira came out of the basement to fetch water from the tank in the yard, he called her name. Mira. She turned around, surprised. Elias? What are you doing here so early? I read the article. She paled, not from fear, from disappointment. Oh, so that's it. It's not it. It's a lie, and I'm going to prove it. How? I'm calling a press conference. Today, in front of the shelter. Are you crazy? That will only make things worse. No, because I'm going to show who used the card, when, for what, and why there is a single cent diverted. But why would someone do this? Out of envy, out of fear, because they think people like you don't deserve to be seen. She looked at him, her eyes moist. And you believe me? I never doubted your heart. I only doubted the world. And that's what stopped me from reacting sooner. She took a deep breath. Then do it. But don't do it for me. Do it for these children. Because if the shelter closes, they'll be on the streets. And there are no more orphanages in Detroit. Then I'll do it for them. And for me, For you, I already did. I came back. She smiled a small but true smile. Then go. But a warning first. If you wear a black suit, I'll drop you off on the corner. I'm in sneakers and a hoodie. Approved. As Elias walked back to the car, he heard Mira return to the basement and tell the children. Today, the rabbit story will have a different ending. Because this time, he didn't jump alone. Elias called James before getting into the car. Prepare everything. Press conference at 11 a.m. location, Jefferson School. And what are you going to say, sir? That the truth doesn't need billions. Just courage. And if the press asks why you trust her, tell them she's the only person who saw me as human. Before I remembered I was one, the snow returned. Not the soft, silent snow from before, but the snow that falls like punishment. Thick, heavy, too silent. Elias Vance didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He didn't call James. He was sitting on the kitchen floor of the empty apartment, laptop open, the screen illuminating his face like an altar of guilt. The Detroit Free Press article was still open. Scandal. Housekeeper accused of embezzling funds from charity event. The accusations were absurd, false, fabricated. But what killed him wasn't the lie. It was his silence. He had hesitated, not out of doubt. He knew Mira hadn't stolen anything. But for an instant, a single, terrible instant, he wondered, what if she used the car for something more? What if she planned this from the start? She had never asked for anything. She had never talked about money. She had never tried to get close to him. And now, when the world accused her of being an opportunist, he didn't shout. He didn't defend her. He didn't call. He waited. He waited for a receipt. He waited for a protocol. He waited for a judgment. And while he waited, Mira left, without a goodbye, without an explanation. Just a note left on the kitchen door, under a jar of instant coffee. You didn't doubt my honesty. You doubted my humanity. And that is more painful than any accusation. Elias didn't cry. He just squeezed the paper until the corners tore. That morning, he went to the shelter. The door was locked. Margaret wasn't there. A man in a white lab coat, the new temporary coordinator, received him with a look of weariness. She hasn't been back since she left. Where did she go? I don't know, but she left this. The man handed him a cardboard box, crushed, tied with a red ribbon. Inside there was a children's drawing book with children's scribbles. Grace is the best. She gave me a dragon. She knows how to make laughter. A pair of rubber gloves. Torn at the index finger, a broken coffee mug. With a drawing, a clown holding a dollar black credit card. Cut in half, and Elias sat on the floor of the empty corridor, the box on his lap, and began to cry, not for forgiveness, but for loss. He had been a man who had everything, and he had lost the only person who wanted nothing. That night, Elias went to the public library on 10th Street. He opened the book Mira had left. The boy who didn't want to be forgotten. On the last page, there was a new annotation, in different, firmer handwriting, as if written with determination. Asterisk. If you are reading this, then you are still here. And if you are still here, then you still have a chance. I didn't leave because you doubted me. I left because you taught me that even when someone loves you, if they don't trust you, you aren't real to them. I don't need you, but you need me. And if one day you understand that, come to the last bench in the last row of the library. I will be there, not to forgive, to see if you learned. Asterisk. Elias did not sleep. He spent the next 3 days searching. He called every shelter in the region. He checked security cameras. He asked rideshare drivers, nurses, volunteers. No trace. Until, on the 4th morning, James arrived with an envelope. Sir, this arrived by mail. No sender. Inside there was a note and a map. The note, you won't find her, but she'll find you, if you still want to. The map was of Detroit. A single mark, bench 7, row 12, 10th Public Library. Elias ran. He ran through the snow, the wind, the broken streetlights. The streets had become as hell. He arrived at the library at 8 a.m. The door was open. The place was empty. But on the last bench in the last row, there was an open notebook, and beside it, a cup of instant coffee, still warm. Elias sat down. In the notebook, a single sentence written in black pen, in large letters as of a silent scream. You don't need to find me. You need to find yourself. And Elias understood. She wasn't running from him. She was running from the man he had become. The man who trusted in numbers, in cards, in tests, and not in people. He picked up the notebook. On the next page, there was a drawing made by a child, a girl with messy hair, wearing a large coat, holding a bucket of hot dogs. Beside it, a sentence written in a child's handwriting. She's not a housekeeper. She is home. Elias closed his eyes. He felt the warmth of the coffee in his hand. And for the first time since everything began, he didn't think about how to fix the mistake. He thought about how to be someone who didn't need fixing. He did not leave the library. He stayed sitting until sunset, and when the guard came to close the building, Elias didn't move. Sir, the building is closing. Elias looked at him. I'm waiting for someone. Who? Someone who still believes I can be better. The guard looked at the notebook, at the coffee, at the man in the torn suit, with red eyes and trembling hands. Then maybe she already came. Elias looked at the window. The snow was falling, and outside at the end of the street, he saw her, a woman, in a worn coat, a scarf on her hair, a backpack on her back, standing, watching. She didn't come to him. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, as if waiting, as if knowing that he needed to see what he had lost before trying to get it back. Elias stood up. Slowly, he picked up the notebook and walked to the door. He opened it. The snow fell onto his shoulders. She didn't move, but her eyes said everything. Mira? She nodded. You came back. No. He took a deep breath. I found myself. She took one step forward. And now, Elias looked at the notebook, at the girl's drawing, at the coffee cup, at her. Now, he said, his voice low but firm, I give you the chance to tell me what to do. She smiled, small, real, like the first smile of a child who hasn't been deceived. Shall we make some coffee? With sugar? Always. She held out her hand, and Elias, for the first time in years, did not hesitate. He took it, and together, under the snow that fell like tears, they walked out of the library, without a destination, just with the silence between them, and the weight of a promise that didn't need words, because now, he no longer wanted a card. He wanted a life. And Mira only wanted someone who wouldn't doubt, before asking, before judging, before testing, just who believed. The snow returned. Not the soft snow of that first week. Not the snow that covered the roofs like a blanket, but the snow that falls like a sentence, cold, silent, relentless. Elias Vance's apartment was empty, not just of furniture, of sound, of life. Myra's absence was not merely physical. It was a vacuum that sucked the air from the room, the warmth from the kitchen, even the echo of the off-key song she sang while cleaning. He did not sleep that night, nor the next. He spent the days sitting on the sofa, the notebook she had left open on his lap, reading and rereading the same sentences as if they were a mantra. You didn't doubt my honesty. You doubted my humanity. And that is more painful than any accusation. He hadn't been unfair. He had been cowardly. When the article came out, scandal, housekeeper accused of embezzling funds from charity event, he didn't shout. He didn't call the press. He didn't call Mira to say, I believe in you. He hesitated. For 1 second, just one. He wondered, what if she had used the money for something she hadn't told him? What if she had lied about the shelter? What if, and it was that what if that killed her? Not the accusation, not the newspaper, not the world. It was his silence. She didn't leave because the world attacked her. She left because he didn't defend her. And Elias understood in that moment what she had said at the cafe, when he asked why she never talked about the orphanage. Because whoever asks is still waiting for someone to come back. She had waited for years, for all the time someone had left her. And now, when she most needed someone to believe, he wasn't what she needed. He was what she had already learned to fear. On the morning of the third day, Elias went to the library. The same bookshelf, the same bench, The same cold coffee mug, still on the table. He sat down and wrote, not an email, not an official statement, not a note for the newspaper. He wrote a letter on paper with a pen as if he were talking to her face to face. Mira, I don't deserve a response, but I need you to know what happened after you left. I didn't stand still. I didn't wait for someone to tell me what to do. I went after them. I found the people who planted the lie. I listened to the recordings. I saw the emails. I saw how Daisy and Susanna enjoyed themselves while you cried alone in your room. I saw how Valeria pretended not to know, just to keep her hands clean. I went to the shelter, and I saw the children. I saw the drawings you made with them. I saw the notebook where you wrote each of their names with the date you met them. And I saw what you saw when you first looked at me. Not a billionaire, not a boss, a man who had everything, and yet didn't know what it felt like to be seen. I doubted you, and that cost me the only place I ever felt at home. Not because of the money, not because of the card, but because you showed me that the truth doesn't need words. It needs courage. I don't have courage, or at least I didn't, but now I'm trying. The press will publish everything, the evidence, the recordings, the lies, and I will put myself in front of all of it. I'm going to say, I was wrong. I doubted the woman who taught me what it means to be human, but that won't bring you back. Only you can do that if you ever come back. I won't ask for forgiveness. I will wait in the same chair, on the same bench, with the same cold coffee, because even if you never see me again, I will still be here, because you taught me that home isn't a place. It's someone who sees you, even when you try to hide. Elias. He put the letter inside an envelope. No address, no stamp, just the name written on the front. Mira. And he left it on the library table, next to the notebook, as a final sign. That night, Elias returned to the shelter, not as a rich man, not as a remorseful man, as a man who had lost everything. And he walked in, without warning, without announcement. He just walked to the basement, where the light was still dim, and the smell of baked bread and paint still lingered in the air. And there, sitting on the floor, with a flashlight on, a child on her lap, and a notebook open on her knee, was Mira. She didn't see him. She was drawing, a boy with a clown hat, and beside him, a woman with loose hair, holding a coffee mug, and below in small but firm handwriting. She didn't know he was watching, but he knew she was the only person who never saw him as a number. Elias took a deep breath and said, softly, "You're still here." She didn't turn around, but the pen stopped. "I never left, Elias." He took a step. "Then why didn't you come back?" She closed the notebook, stood up slowly, and looked at him, not with anger, not with sadness, with something deeper, with relief. "Because I knew you would come. I don't deserve it." "Yes." She walked toward him. "You do deserve it, but not because of what you did, because of what you are doing." She held out her hand, not to touch, but to offer. "I don't want a speech. I don't want a gesture. I don't want a title. I don't want a title of heroine or savior." She pointed to the notebook. "I want you to keep coming here, to keep cleaning the kitchen, to keep sitting on that library bench, to keep remembering that the truth doesn't need words, just presence." She looked into his eyes. "And if you want to, I can still teach you how to make hot dogs." And Elias, for the first time since everything began, didn't think about how to fix the past. He thought about how to build the future. And he took her hand, not to hold, to accept. "I don't know how to make hot dogs. Then we'll start from scratch." They walked out of the basement together. No hugs, no tears, no words, just the snow falling softly over them. And Elias knew in that instant she hadn't been his housekeeper. She had been his home. And he was no longer a man who had everything. He was a man who, finally, had someone. The snow had stopped, but the silence had not. Elias Vance's apartment was empty like a tomb. There was no longer the smell of burned instant coffee, nor the sound of the off-key song Mira sang while cleaning, nor the hazard of a rubber glove left on the sink. It was as if she had never existed. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He did not work. He sat on the sofa, the notebook she had left open on his lap, reading and rereading the same sentences as if they were a mantra. You didn't doubt my honesty. You doubted my humanity. And that is more painful than any accusation. He hadn't been unfair. He had been cowardly. When the article came out, scandal, housekeeper accused of embezzling funds from charity event, he didn't shout. He didn't call the press. He didn't call Mirror to say, I believe in you. He hesitated. For 1 second, just one. He wondered, what if she had used the money for something she hadn't told him? What if she had lied about the shelter? What if that killed her? Not the accusation, not the newspaper, not the world. It was his silence. She didn't leave because the world attacked her. She left because he didn't defend her. And Elias understood in that moment what she had said at the cafe when he asked why she never spoke about the orphanage. Because whoever asks is still waiting for someone to come back. She had waited for years, for all the time someone had left her. And now, when she most needed someone to believe, he wasn't what she needed. He was what she had already learned to fear. On the morning of the 3rd day, Elias went to the library. The same bookshelf, the same bench, the same cold coffee mug, still on the table. He sat down and wrote, not an email, not an official statement, not a note for the newspaper. He wrote a letter on paper with a pen, as if he were talking to her face to face. Mira, I don't deserve a response, but I need you to know what happened after you left. I didn't stand still. I didn't wait for someone to tell me what to do. I went after them. I found the people who planted the lie. I listened to the recordings. I saw the emails. I saw how Daisy and Susanna enjoyed themselves while you cried alone in your room. I saw how Valeria pretended she didn't know. Just to keep her hands clean, I went to the shelter, and I saw the children. I saw the drawings you made with them. I saw the notebook where you wrote each of their names, with the date you met them. And I saw what you saw when you first looked at me. Not a billionaire, not a boss, a man who had everything, and yet didn't know what it meant to be seen. I doubted you, and that cost me the only place I ever felt at home. Not because of the money, not because of the card, but because you showed me that the truth doesn't need words. It needs courage. I don't have courage, or at least I didn't, but now I'm trying. The press will publish everything, the evidence, the recordings, the lies, and I will put myself in front of all of it. I'm going to say, I was wrong. I doubted the woman who taught me what it is to be human, but that won't bring you back. Only you can do that if you ever come back. I won't ask for forgiveness. I will wait in the same chair, on the same bench, with the same cold coffee, because even if you never see me again, I will still be here, because you taught me that home isn't a place. It's someone who sees you, even when you try to hide. Elias, he placed a letter inside an envelope. No address, no stamp, just a name written on the front. Mira, and he left it on the library table, next to the notebook, as a final sign. That night, Elias returned to the shelter, not as a rich man, not as a remorseful man, as a man who had lost everything. And he walked in, without warning, without announcing. He just walked to the basement, where the light was still dim, and the smell of baked bread and paint still lingered in the air. And there, sitting on the floor, with a flashlight on, a child on her lap, and a notebook open on her knee, was Mira. She didn't see him. She was drawing. A boy with a clown hat, and beside him, a woman with loose hair, holding a coffee mug, and below in small but firm handwriting. She didn't know he was watching, but he knew she was the only person who never saw him as a number. Elias took a deep breath and said, softly, "You're still here." She didn't turn around, but the pen stopped. I never left, Elias. He took a step. Then, why didn't you come back? She closed the notebook, stood up slowly, and looked at him, not with anger, not with sadness, with something deeper, with relief, because I knew you would come. I don't deserve it. No. She walked toward him, You do deserve it. But not because of what you did, because of what you are doing. She held out her hand, not to touch, but to offer. I don't want a speech. I don't want a gesture. I don't want a title. I don't want a title of heroine or savior. She pointed to the notebook. I want you to keep coming here, to keep cleaning the kitchen, to keep sitting on that library bench, to keep remembering that the truth doesn't need words, just presence. She looked into his eyes. And if you want to, I can still teach you how to make hot dogs. And Elias, for the first time since everything began, didn't think about how to fix the past. He thought about how to build the future. And he took her hand, not to hold, to accept. I don't know how to make hot dogs. Then we'll start from scratch. They walked out of the basement together. No hugs, no tears, no words, just the snow falling softly over them. And Elias knew in that instant she hadn't been his housekeeper. She had been his home. And he was no longer a man who had everything. He was a man who finally had someone. The garden of St. Francis' home was silent. Not the silence of absence, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of someone who, after everything, after lies, after doubts, after dry tears on the kitchen floor, finally knew where he belonged. Oliver and Grace sat together on the wooden bench, beneath the shade of an ancient oak, their bare feet in the damp spring grass. The children still played in the distance, with paper lanterns made from napkins, running as if time did not exist. Grace had her hands clasped in her lap. Oliver, his eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sun began to break the sky like a whisper. Do you think they'll remember this? He asked, without looking at her. Who? The children. 10 years from now, when they are adults, will they remember this day? Perhaps not the day. She paused. But they will remember how they felt. And how did they feel? Safe. She turned her head, and the sun hit her face, illuminating the small wrinkles beside her eyes, the ones that came from laughter, not from crying. No one ever made them feel safe before. And us? She smiled lightly. We are what they learned to call home. And is that enough? It's everything. Oliver did not answer. He just took her hand. She did not pull away. That morning, the world had not changed. There were still injustices. There were still people who used money as a shield. There were still newspapers that sold tragedies as entertainment. But inside that garden, something had been restored, not by a speech, not by a check, not by a pardon, by presence, by having stayed, by having returned, by choosing to believe, even when the world screamed that it was madness. That night, in the new apartment they bought together, a small place, with windows that didn't close properly and a furnace that coughed like an old man, Grace was in the kitchen, trying to make pancakes. Oliver watched her from the doorway, a coffee in his hand, his eyes tired, but calm. She flipped the pancake. It burned. A little. Not much, but enough for the smell of smoke to rise. Oh, crap, she murmured. I warned you, he said, walking into the kitchen. I didn't warn you. I told you I would try. And you tried, and failed. No. He took the pan, removed the burned pancake, and placed another on the flame. You tried, and that is what I learned from you. What? That success is not burning. It's what? It's returning. He placed a new pancake in front of her, always returning. She looked at him. For the first time in months, there was no laughter. There was no defense. There was no humor to hide the pain. Only silence and a look. Oliver placed his hand over hers. I won't ask you to forget, nor will I ask you to forgive. But, I want you to know. He took a deep breath. I don't doubt anymore. Neither do I. She smiled small. Because if you doubt again, I know you'll have to eat this for a month. All right. And sing with me every morning. All right. And never wear a fake mustache again. Never again. Even if it's to investigate a suspect, even then. And if it's to save me, still then. Why? Because you don't need saving grace. What do I need? For someone to see you. And do you see me? Yes. How? As the woman who cleaned my floor and taught me that the floor is not just what you clean. It's the place where you decide if you're going to stay. She moved closer. And did you decide to stay? Yes. Without conditions? With all of them. Even the ones that burn. Especially the ones that burn. She kissed him. Not like an ending. Like a beginning. The next morning, Oliver woke up early. He went to the kitchen. Grace was already there, wearing a bare apron, a spoon in her hand, and a smile that needed no words. "Good morning, Mr. Grant." "Good morning, Mrs. Grant." "Shouldn't you be at the office?" "Not anymore." "Oh, I retired." She stopped. "What?" "I retired." "From what?" "From trying to be someone I'm not." He picked up a glass, filled it with tap water. "The company didn't want me anymore." "Why?" "Because I stopped thinking about profit and started thinking about what? About you, about us, about who we are. And what are we going to do? We're going to stay here. In the apartment, in the kitchen, in the garden, in the libraries, in the churches, in the streets, with the children who still need someone who doesn't judge them. And you? Me? What are you going to do?" He looked at her. "I'm going to learn to make pancakes. Without burning them, with burning them. Without fear, with fear. Without doubt, with doubt. But I'm going to choose to trust. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Even when I burn everything. Especially when you burn everything." "Why?" "Because you are the only person who made me feel that." He stopped. "That what I had wasn't enough." "And what did you discover?" "That what I needed," he took the spoon from her hand, "was someone who didn't want anything from me, except that I wanted everything from you. I know, and I still do." Then, she rested her head on his shoulder. "Make the next pancake. It's going to burn. I know, but I'll help you. I know, because I love you. I love you too, Oliver. Even with the coughing furnace? Even with the coughing furnace. Even with the fake mustache? Even with the fake mustache. Even with the way you sing? Even with the way you sing. Even with everything? Even with everything. Why? Because you didn't see me as a project. I saw you as home. And that," she squeezed his hand, "is the only miracle that matters." That night, Oliver didn't sleep. He went to the bedroom, opened the drawer, and took out the black credit card, the one he had given as a test, the one she had used as truth, the one he had forgotten, the one she never forgot. He cut it with his own hands and threw the pieces in the trash. Then he wrote a letter and left it on the kitchen table, next to the coffee mug she always used. "Grace, you need a card to prove you were good. I needed a card to prove that I still knew what it was to be human. I gave you power. You gave me purpose. There are no more tests. There are no more experiments. Just us. Just this floor. Just this furnace. Just this kitchen. Just this love that needs no words. And if you ever doubt, I won't ask you to believe. I will show you, every day, until the next pancake burns." Oliver. The next morning, Grace woke up. She went to the kitchen. She saw the letter. She read it. She didn't cry. She smiled. She picked up the spoon. She put the batter in the frying pan, and she sang, off key, with a raspy voice, with an open heart. And Oliver, standing in the doorway, coffee in hand, looked at her, and finally, truly, he knew he needed nothing more, neither money, nor power, nor approval, only her, only that which she had made from what he had lost. She had turned the emptiness into home, and he had learned to stay. Have you ever had someone truly see you, even when you try to hide? Grace had no money. She had no power. She had no title. But she had something no credit card, no mansion, no influencer speech can buy. The courage to be real. While everyone else was trying to sell a version of themselves, she just wanted the children to smile. While everyone calculated the return, she paid with what she had, time, laughter, and a heart that never gave up. Oliver had everything, but it was she who taught him what truly mattered. Have you ever stopped to see who, in your life, is quietly cleaning the floor while you wait for a miracle? Maybe it's not a billionaire. Maybe it's not a celebrity. Maybe it's someone who never asked for anything, who sings off-key, who doesn't post, who doesn't boast, but who unseen rebuilt a world. If the story touched you, comment, "I see you." If you've ever met someone like Grace, share this with someone who needs to remember that true value isn't in what you have, but in what you give, even when no one is watching. And if you still doubt that one person can change everything, watch again, because this isn't just a story. It's a mirror, and maybe it's yours. Subscribe, hit the bell icon, because the next story might be the one that saved you.